we'll get started. Evening, everyone. Yeah. So this is the live Ret Paladin discussion. I'm joined tonight by Fardion, who is the author of the Ret Paladin guide on Icy Veins, which I'm sure some of you will have come across before. And Belf Master Race. No. But obviously, if you hoard, then that's just what you have to go with. There is no other option. There is zero other option. People are still holding out for Zandalari Paladins. We could perhaps talk about that. This is one of those things where people can ask any questions they like to do with Paladins, or just bring up anything, any ideas you want to talk about to do with Retribution Paladins specifically. You're not allowed to talk about known Paladins because, you know, Ian Hazakostas has vetoed those very sensibly. He's a good chap. Who's too loud? Oh my God, how can I be too loud? I was too quiet a minute ago. How can I now be too loud? He's not. I've turned him down since he's last said something. Anyway, you'll just have to cut up.
Is my voice loud right now? I can decrease my.
Well, input. Let's just see if people think it's too loud at the moment, because I've turned it down, so we don't want to double dip.
Wait, let me try from my side.
Term. And then we'll get started. This is the first time I have done this, by the way.
Yeah, same.
Right, okay, great. So, all right, it's fine. Fantastic. So, in terms of likely topics then, I mean, you can ask Fardion anything you want. Obviously, take advantage of the fact that he's on tonight. You know, one of the more progressed Rets. He's on Argus at the moment. He has a sword to die for. What's your item level now? And your sword is like 1006 or something.
Yeah, my weapon eye level is, as you said, 1006, and now I am hovering around 977 eye level, and hopefully I will hit a bit more if I coin Argus. I mean Agramar. Mythic Tire Helm.
Yeah.
I'm a bit shaky because it's the first time as well doing slot.
Yeah, no problem. So people, I mean, obviously we could talk about BFA. There's very little known at the moment. So it would mostly be speculation about what may change, given what Blizzard have already been telling us. They have been telling us that they want to make, which was quite interesting, they want to make all utility valuable, they say. All utility valuable. So that means, presumably, they, I'm guessing, have to make so that either Blessed of Protection changes a little bit, or they have to put in fatal physical mechanics. What do we think about that one? We could talk about how things are going on Taurus. I know I was asked recently, for example, which fights we tended to be looking quite good for. And from that point of view, I guess...
Yeah, but I think Antaurus overall was a very good raid for Reds. It's like one of the best tires that comes to mind apart from HFC.
Yeah.
And Blizzard did a good job on that. Like,
do you think part of that is the fact that because there's very few fights where if a few people die that you wipe, and does that mean we're getting more benefit from Retribution procs than maybe in some other tiers?
I think, like, maybe the only boss that comes to mind that it's so punishing if you die on is the vampire boss. Apart from it, of course, if you die on progress, you will eventually wipe. But yeah, no, I think, like, if you want to pass, of course, you make use of your red buff. But other than that, there's nothing like, what do you say, where red buff will help us get the progress boss, because so far, like, on every boss we did with my guild, red buff wasn't the reason that we killed the boss.
Yeah, there's quite a few bosses as well where the timing of wings is quite helpful as well, isn't there? The 2 minute
like King Garoth. Yeah. Like it's actually really nice how, as you said, some fights where it happens every 2 minutes, so you have your wings up every time. Where it happens, like for King Garoth, for example, it's one of the fights where Ret shines so greatly on it.
Well, I think King Garoth is the fight where you could actually take all your DPS as Rets and it'd be fine. In fact, it'd probably be quite good.
Yeah. Like the Gundams, I call them the robots Gundams. They melt so fast.
Yeah.
because you have your wings up, and if you precast them before the thing starts by like 5 seconds, and you build up 10 stacks, you go there, you burn the machine core, like you burn the Gundam so fast compared to almost any other spec. Maybe monks does better than you on that. That's it.
Windwalker monks have been strong, yeah. Stonehammer just saying there about Varimathras, the Greater Judgment, good on the ads on Mythic mode as well.
Varimathras is good as well.
So I have to be quick in my guild. The sort of people have actually been quite good at switching to the ads. So you've got to make sure you can blast it with a Judgment quick before it goes below half health. High Command's amazing, actually, because the ads keep popping up every half a minute as well. So it's as long as I don't be stupid and use my wake a second before they spawn, then that's quite... So you can basically, if you've got Holy Power, you can fire a Divine Storm through them, but you can basically Wake of Ashes, Judge, and Divine Storm through them before they run off to the ranged, I find sometimes. Except for me personally, it keeps giving me the pulse grenades whenever my wings is up or whenever that's happening. But there you go. So Ghost Reactor's asking there, what are the 2 changes you'd like to see in BFA? So what do you think yours would be, Fardion?
I would love for them to, let's see, introduce more utilities like Aura Mastery, like Heart of Sacrifice, like... I would also like them if they remove the retribution damage and they baked it into the spec. So I don't want my raid, like I don't want my damage to be linked to my raid being shitters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the retribution passive is the one thing I'd remove. Like the utility, because they did say it was in the Q&A, wasn't it? There was a specific question about too much being... When they talked about Class Fantasy and Legion, it was actually about specs, really. And Ian Hazakostas did concede. He did say that actually utility should be class-wide. So I haven't seen any evidence of it yet in what's been data mined for BFA. But from what he said is utility should be class-wide. He did say apart from utility that's like for that's clearly for healers. So anything that if you had it would be muscling in on a healer's job, you wouldn't. But that should mean that, for example, a protection paladin shouldn't have any utility that we don't have. From what he said, unless he's basically going to lie in, then from what he said, prop paladins shouldn't have anything that we don't, is how I read that.
Yeah.
That includes spellboarding. So they either take it off like prots or we get it. That would be very nice.
Yeah, that would be great. But I also think that them making, like, as you saw, they're introducing auras like the Paladin one where it gives to the raid 10% armor.
Yeah.
Which goes both ways of being a damage reduction, physical damage and magical damage. That's what I think it is. So the thing is, like, both of the 3 specs can give it, which doesn't make it unique. Like, compared to other specs where a Demon Hunter, for example, gets his own thing, DPS Havoc gets its own thing. No? Or am I correct or wrong? So I want them, if they want to introduce a utility thing, to be like something just for Rets have it. So you should bring a Ret with you if you want. Let's say there's a fight that depends on it. Like there's a fight that should requires a Ret from you.
Yeah, I think the thing that's often bitten us on the arse is, generally speaking, whatever we bring is also brought by a Holy Paladin. Because not all raids will have a prop Paladin, but they'll all have a Holy Paladin.
Yes, because Holy Paladin is like one of the best healing classes. And if they will share some of our utilities, like the armor, the aura armor, or bobs, and even Hand of Sacrifice.
Hand of Sacrifice, exactly.
What's the reason to bring a Ret later on?
Yeah.
So I hope they do something that will give the raid a reason to bring a Ret with them, apart from like some special cases.
I do as well. I think that the thing it would be, though, in terms of their philosophy, if they do make utility class wide, which is what I'd want them to, I don't think we'd have anything that maybe Holy doesn't, because then that would be going against it as well. The other one, the issue I have, the worry I have, shall we say, let's say for fights where you don't want to take lots of melee, is Like I think in my guild, and I've mentioned this before, I think. So we've got a Brewmaster and a Guardian Druid as our 2 tanks. So that basically means, let's say all of the auras are useful. You want them all in your raid. And Ian Hazakostas has said he wants to encourage people to not have a missing class in the raid. So that would get me thinking, okay, so you're going to have to take a DPS DK. Well, that's melee only, because we haven't got the tank to give us the DK buff. So we have to take a melee DPS for that spot. We have to take a DPS warrior, because again, that's the only way to get the warrior aura in. We have to take a DPS demon hunter, because that's the only way to get that one in as well. And of course, you've got to take at least 1 rogue. So that's straight away 4 melee slots that are, you know, and let's say, okay, you had a protection warrior. Well, maybe you don't have a brewmaster or a mistweaver, and that means the windwalker. There could easily be 4 or 5 slots just taken up with getting the auras in. And the Ret, well, we've got a Holy Paladin. We don't need it for that.
Yes, absolutely. For that, I would really love if they introduced a specific aura for each spec. Like maybe Ret will give you attack power, some sort of percentage. Holy will give you a magic reduction, and the Prot will give you physical reduction, sort of thing. Like it shouldn't be one color for all the spec, for all the class. This will kill like our importance in a way coming into BFA. That's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, the way I look at it, in terms of what you do to fix it, it seems to go against their stated policy. I don't think they would. That is my worry. Not that I'm worried about, like, whenever I say this, I'm not worried about Rets in general. Like, I have raided as a Retribution Paladin ever since Hydral and Black Temple. Basically, the last fight I ever did where I was maining a Holy Paladin was Kel'Thas. So I've managed to stumble through as a Ret through every other tier, but it's not been always easy. The Shifty Prick there saying, whenever you die, is it a good excuse to say that Divine Steed was on global cooldown? It is on a global cooldown, isn't it? That's annoying. I don't know what other people think.
Like, I think there's some cases where your excuse is actually valid. Like Mistress pre-nerf on the waves. If you was in a bad spot, like during progress, and you didn't precast your horse, you're 100% dead.
That's right, because the auto bubble wouldn't help you. Bubble would help you, but not auto bubble.
So, like if you had the chance to precast bubble, you should have precasted your horse.
I mean, I have a problem with you. See, a global. You have to think about what a global cooldown exists for. So it makes sense to exist for DPS abilities.
Yes,
absolutely. But like it doesn't
for utilities.
Yeah, I remember when Rebuke was on the global cooldown. I remember on Horadon, there were ads at a certain point where when he crashed into the second gate, can't remember, but there were poison spitting ads anyway, and you had to interrupt them fairly quickly. And most people were put on it with like a pair, so you both interrupted it. That way, if one mucked it up, the other one would get it. But I was put on one on my own, and sometimes it went through. And it was always because I was globaled. Same with stuns. And then they took that off the global cooldown. Or was it they had to stun?
All the movement speed related stuff, your defensive should never be on the global cooldown.
No, I agree. Yeah, defensives.
Yeah.
Interrupts, which are doing stuns, even. You know, all those sort of things, all the sort of things that you're going to have to do on a hair trigger. I don't see how it makes sense to put them on a global cooldown. I will admit, though, when during Warlords of Draenor, you know, when Hand of Sacrifice wasn't on the global cooldown, because I wasn't used to that, I did occasionally double hit it, which was a bit of a problem on Gruul when I suddenly realised that I didn't have it for a tank when they needed it, because I'm in the habit of, like, when I'm wanting to press a key, spamming the hell out of that key because of global cooldowns so that it activates as soon as the global cooldown is over. And I, you know, because I wasn't used to having Hand of Sacrifice, because that was when you had the second charge of it.
Yeah.
So it took me a little while to get used to that before I stopped doing it. I'd have to remember only press it once and
Yeah,
not
the
to
good old days
keep tapping.
when utilities had 2 charges.
Yeah.
Bob had 2 charges. Yeah, that was great, to be honest.
So,
It
but
made-
but no, yeah. I mean, damage abilities obviously need to be on the global cooldown. I know Soul Sacker was talking today because he was talking about in the Ret Discord the Lightforged Draenei ability and how it would be better if that was off the global cooldown. But to be fair, that's damage, isn't it? So I can understand them not doing that.
I never really went to check the Lightforged because I hear that it's low on damage and
It's not great, no. It's not really a compensation for... Obviously, we can't have Void Elf Paladins. I mean, that's... You know, I sent a jokey tweet
it's impossible.
to Warcraft devs. I actually said, is it a coincidence that the only race, literally the only race where we can't... that can't possibly be Paladins gets a movement speed? Because, you know... I don't think our movement is that. I mean, obviously DKs will be, you know, going, well, your movement speed is much better than ours, which it is. Well, it's better than
Like
that,
right now, there's no in this tier, there's not really a problem with our movement.
No, I've never been tempted to take Cavalier, and it's not like I die all the time or bubble auto procs all the time. You know, there's several fights where I'd be perfectly happy not to have Divine Intervention, but I don't really feel the need to have Cavalier, so I just keep it.
Nope. Not like TOS where if you didn't have oh my god, yes, it's a black dot in our history. Let's just ignore it. It never happened.
Well, it certainly was in mine. I didn't even get cutting edge in the end. It's a disaster.
Yeah, it was a disaster. That's right.
Croesus. Oh well, the only times I was fine on Croesus, actually, I was absolutely fine. Never failed the bridge thing. The only issue I ever had on Croesus is when I started streaming. You know, I hadn't been used to streaming, and blah blah blah. And I was looking at the chat, and then the bridge broke from under me. I thought, maybe I'd better pay attention to the fight, which is why I now don't look at the chat when the fight is on. I wait till between pulls, because that was not good. Are Demon Hunters the new Ret Paladins? In what way, Shifty?
Yeah. I think Demon Hunters now in a very good spot with their new play style. Like they almost have a very high uptime on their metamorphosis, using their demonic belly.
Well, our Demon Hunter goes Vengeance, and he's our Soaker. So he's just the one spawning ads and dealing with the plague. The Demon Hunters, though, will suffer the same problem as us in theory, in that they only have one DPS spec. Now, a pure DPS spec, of course, they might have one spec that's really good against one type of fight, and then it's really bad at another one, but then there's another spec that's really good on it. Demon Hunters don't have that. That being said, Demon Hunters don't have a healing spec, so if you don't have a Demon Hunter tank, and I don't think many do,
no,
then
there's no way.
In that case, if you need, again, it comes to the auras for BFA. If you want that aura in there, you're taking a Havoc Demon Hunter, and that's all there is to it.
Yes, yep, you're absolutely taking a Demon Hunter, and you're right.
So, HMT. Am I missing something? What's HMT? Oh, High Mountain. Is that what that means?
Yeah, they have like
everyone can be a warrior, though. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're going to allow gnomes to be warriors, then you can't really deny it to any race, can you? Charge, leap, charge. Yeah. The only thing I have a gripe with warriors about, to be honest, is this idea, like they took things like Hand of Sacrifice and Devotion Aura away from us because, you know, they gave them to the healer because, oh, that's a healer thing, that's a healer utility. So what they're basically saying is you shouldn't have any raid-wide defensives unless you're a healer. And then I think to myself, so why have warriors got Rallying Cry then? What's that about?
I mean, they have to keep them relevant in a way. So,
well, I mean, they'll sort that out in BFA, as I say, with the aura. So I can only imagine they're removing Rallying Cry. If they don't remove Rallying Cry, or if at the end of it there are utilities that are not shared across the class without it being, you know, a healer utility, then I'm going to sort of say that they've basically made stuff up in that Q&A. Because, excuse me, because I was quite pleased for them to say that utility should be class-wide, because it should be. Like, I think you can get away, if they want to make unique utility, you can get away with that. Hi, Syndicate. You can get away with that in like 12 classes. I think even 12 is a lot. But when you talk about unique utility for 36 specs, that's just ridiculous.
Well, you have a huge team that, I mean, you have a huge team who will be dedicated to that. I don't think it's impossible. Like, if they actually invest resources in doing so, to make every spec unique, instead of just making a class unique.
Well, the thing is, I mean, it's got to be made useful as well, though, hasn't it? Because at the moment, I would say it is unique. Every class has some unique utility already, and always has. It's just that a lot of it's useless. You would never take it.
You want a red utility, not a personal utility or that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, I remember a few years ago, at the end of... So, in my guild, this was Mop, and I'd beaten what was called Heroic Garrosh at the time, but called Mythic now. So I'd finished it, but the guild, you know, was sort of in a bit of a decline, so I changed guilds. And I applied to a guild that were advertising for a Ret Paladin, which I did end up joining. But I noticed when I was looking through, because I was sort of doing my background on guilds to see how they are, and they didn't seem to have a Ret Paladin, so I thought, why are you recruiting a Ret Paladin? Because it didn't look like someone had just left it. So I thought, why are you recruiting? And they said, well, we've tried to have one, but they've been a bit unreliable. I thought, fair enough. I says, but why are you recruiting a Ret for when... Because they'd completed the tier as well. In fact, they were like top 50. And they said, because at the time in MOP, there was going to be a load of pruning for Walls of Draenor, but they hadn't, at the time, Blizzard hadn't said what was going to be pruned. And his response was, we don't know what's going to be pruned. But what we do know is that Paladins will always have loads of utility. Which now is a bit of... You look back and laugh now because we had everything stripped from us. But yeah, there were a few fights where it was useful.
Like, we still have the Bob Blessing of Protection, as Ian said. And it's kind of useful in the last tier. Like, for example, on Imonar, where you have to bop the tank when he goes to the third platform. And also on Argus or Mythic, where you have to bop the tank.
But the thing is,
he wants to soak the orbs or bop yourself. Or you can even, like, save the people who got hit by the cleave thingy.
Yeah.
Not the cleave, I don't know what's their name.
Yeah, it's been useful on a few things. Like, you could bop people on Mistress Azine as well who got the Murlocs on their face. So you'd be able to bop healers or someone who needed to take a fish, for example.
Yeah.
But the thing with bop is it comes in useful about 3 times an expansion. Whereas some utility that people have comes in useful every single fight. Like Rallying Cry is always going to be useful. You will always be able to use Rallying Cry. When a boss is difficult. If it's not difficult, you don't need anything.
But I think warriors are the only ones with the...
They are the only ones with that.
Yeah.
You could also argue, you know... Yeah, but anyway... in terms of DPS utility ones, I mean, you're talking Warlocks are always useful. Rogues are always useful. Warriors have their Rallying Cry. Hunters are always useful. I think those are the main ones with really good
have
utility.
Stampeding Roar as well. Stampeding Roar.
That's... Hold on, which druids is that? I always forget now. Is that...
I think it's Feral.
Feral druids. Yeah. Not everyone has a Feral druid, do they? Although it's, I think, possibly a few more now after they changed it halfway through. Yeah. So let's catch up with some of these questions then. What's our wish list in BFA for talents?
That's a good question.
The thing is, as well, we have to bear in mind what they've said about talents too, because I think when they eventually start removing the NDAs on the people in the alpha, and we can start actually reporting on what's going on in there. There will be some things where it'll be fruitful to like really give proper feedback on forums and let Blizzard know what we want. But I wouldn't waste time asking for something that goes against their stated philosophy.
I know from now what I'm going to campaign for. They are going to remove the auto bubble. It's a thing that they introduced it. Like for how many years are we playing it? Like almost 2 years right now. And imagine them removing it completely next add-on.
I'd be okay with it if they gave me back divine protection. Like I quite liked having a damage reduction on a shortish cooldown.
Yeah, but still that sheet bubble is so good for progress. Like, it's so good.
Well, it depends where you are as well. You're much higher progress than I am. I've not generally found myself needed that. It's nice when it's nice to have it. I mean, I have it by default. It's good to have it, and occasionally it comes in useful. Covenant comes in useful, if I'm honest. Every now and then, I'm not always that careful about dodging the shadow blades. I'm fine on the whirling saber thing, but the shadow blades pressed up against a wall, I'm not always looking around for it, and occasionally it has saved me there. I mean, you don't get killed every time on that, but if you get hit by that at the same time as say storm's on, or you've got the fulmination or something, then that can be awkward.
That will be unlucky. It really depends on how you position it. Because
we position it, I think, a little bit too close to a wall during those times. Sometimes I lose line of sight on it. It's shoved into it. There's like a little corner thing that shoves out.
Yeah, since I have the duty of attacking Thoraya and Azaret, I always try to keep the boss away from the wall as much as possible, so we don't get into.
Yeah, we don't do that, unfortunately. I wish we did. A Holy Paladin's overpowered in Mythic Plus. I don't know. I've hardly ever done any Mythic Plus with a Holy Paladin, if I'm honest. In fact, I don't think I've done any really high keys with a Holy Paladin ever. So Fardion might have a view on that one.
No, I don't remember. Like, I think they are. Like, we have a Holy Paladin in our guild, and he's killing it in Mythic Plus. His name is Nali. Like, when he used to play a Holy Paladin, he did insane keys back then, 20 plus. But that one was like, yeah, he did good keys as a Holy Paladin. So I will assume it's good in Mythic Plus. Like, I'm not really following the Mythic Plus scene at all, to be honest.
No, I'm not. I only do. I make sure I do my weekly one just to get the chest. I mean, I think one potential issue is where you do have some that are very powerful in dungeons is they need, again, it's this uniqueness, which is fine, because I think that's worked with healers anyway. So you've got 6 healing specs. They all play differently. They're all pretty good for that point of view. Inevitably, it means that in a dungeon situation where you can only have one healer, like in a raid, then they work together. So you have throughput healers, and you have the ones that's like druids that just dot everyone up or dot hot, even better, everyone up and things like that. But in a dungeon, it's all, you've got one healer, and so some of them will naturally be better solo healing than others.
I don't know. I am a better red healer than a Mythic Plus. Like, I think I healed 15 or 16 a couple of times, and it was really hell as a Holy Paladin. Like, seeing your people die while your cast is going off slowly, it's not really the best situation to be in.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't healed this expansion, but when I used to heal properly, which was a long time ago now, we had hardly any spells. I mean, part of it was remembering, well, you got, once you heal a bit, you get a feeling for how long the cast time is and also how much it's going to heal for. You can also work out who's about to take damage, and you're very much in tune with when the damage is going out, so you could be quite proactive with it. Which is why I don't really heal now, because I don't want to go in and say, oh yeah, I can heal, and then make a right arse of it, because actually I'm not at all in tune with how long it's going to take me to cast certain abilities and how much it's going to do. Like, have I got time to cast a bigger heal, which admittedly is a faster heal now, or do I have to holy shock them quickly, or even lay on hands them because, you know, I've left it too late? Those sort of things I don't know.
Just a useless stress to go through. Just sign up as a tank or a ret and get your weekly done.
Yeah. Well, I always manage anyway. I just pester people. I'll probably pester people after the Sunday raid, just to go and get one done. There's bound to be some other people that haven't done it yet. But so I mean, but I mean, Rets are fine for Mythic Plus anyway, so there's no real issue there. It's only an issue if you're trying to get a group that's already got 2 melee. Maybe they don't want 3. I suppose it depends on the affixes.
And
sometimes you don't want 3.
It also depends on the dungeon. Let's say
a
high key on Eye of Azara. There's that Thunder boss.
Yes.
Maybe at 23 plus or 24, it one-shots you regardless. So you can, maybe with Pridas and the rest, you can handle the third one. And after that, you will die. They're like...
Well, if ever I fear for my life in a Mythic Plus, I always take the cheat death braces.
No, it's like you will immune the first one. A healer will help you the second one. And I will assume the third one will be from your Pridas and your rest. Fourth one, if the boss is still alive by then, you will die. And they will have to raise you up. Yeah. Like, it sucks how...
Oh, thank you very much, Tom.
Like, Ret... The thing that annoys me about Ret, that it has no magical damage reduction at all.
No, well, this is what I mean about, like, divine... If we had divine protection back, and I know there was, like, 2 different modes with glyphs of having divine protection. But it used to be, its normal state used to be magical.
Like
you could have...
Why it got removed. It's such a useful ability.
Yeah. Well, that's probably why it got removed. It's too useful.
No, like we need any sort of magical reduction. Since almost all the raids have been magical damage.
Well, this is my argument about comparing Divine Shield with Cloak of Shadows. Like, they're increasing the cooldown Cloak of Shadows for BFA, but they said, Cloak of Shadows has less than 1.5 minute cooldown at the moment. So, and it's like, it makes you immune to basically everything that can kill you. Not absolutely everything, all right? It didn't protect you from the Hydra shot on Mistress, but then you didn't need anything to protect yourself from the Hydra shot on Mistress unless your raid was stupid. So if people were soaking it, it was fine anyway. Basically.
No, I was lucky enough to be in a guild that didn't struggle too much on Mistress.
Yeah. So rogues effectively have something that is, to all intents and purposes, as good as Divine Shield. The only thing Divine Shield can do that Cloak of Shadows can't is let you bubble half at the end of the night. That's it. That is it. That's that. And we have to have a 5-minute cooldown for that? Just to get away with 1 repair? No, that's not how it works. So it's absolute nonsense. And again, people will just point out and say, oh, but that makes you immune to physical as well. I would actually rather it didn't. I would rather Divine Shield was just purely magic damage and on a shorter cooldown, and we'll have Bop for the physical bit. Let us choose between the two. That'd be fine then. And then people will probably moan about that, but still. It's the cooldown that's the issue, because it's no good if you can only use your defensive once per fight.
Even though our immunes aren't even that perfect in the first place. Like Divine Intervention, our strongest defensive, just absorbs up to 100 million damage. Abilities that hits more, like fishes on Mistress or...
Yeah. There was the eye on the guy in Nighthold. I've forgotten his name now.
Yeah. And even the vampire boss on Nighthold, Argus on Mythic, when the orbs explode.
Yeah.
Even Agramar, the fire dots. Bubble doesn't help you at all in those. And you don't have a magical reduction to reduce even the damage you get from them. It's just like... Yeah. Not perfect at all. It's actually sad, really. Like,
well, Earth was saying Holy Paladins love to lay on hands you just before you bubble and you to just die. I actually had that happen to me twice in fairly quick succession. I was in In fact, it was with Fardion, actually. We did, do you remember on your Warlock, we did a Mythic Plus.
Yeah.
And there was a Holy Paladin in that. And we were in the room with the ads just before that four-legged boss. So with all the arcane stuff going out. And my health was going down. And I thought, I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait. And then I was intending to lay on hands myself because I wasn't getting healed from the Paladin. But I thought, fair enough, he's focusing on the tank. And then, just as I was about to do that, he put Blessing of Protection on me. The single most useless forbearance giving ability he could have done. Because it was magical damage I was taking, so it did nothing, but it put forbearance on me, which meant I couldn't lay on hands. And then I died. And that you think is a pug. Okay, in a pug that can happen. But then in my raid, my guild leader of all people, on Iminar, same thing happened. I was running across a bridge. I was quite low on health. I hit an orb, so I thought, oh, crap. And I was about to bubble. I thought, it's no problem. I've got bubble. And he put lay on hands on me. And I actually didn't realise at the time. I need to make myself a big warning sound and get forbearance, maybe. But it hardly ever happens. I thought it was rule number 1. You never, ever, ever use a forbearance-causing ability on another paladin without their expressed permission. But, yeah, he put that on me. And then, so there was me thinking, it's fine. I'll just go through this orb, auto-bubble, no problem. It was the last bridge anyway. And then I just died. I thought, what the hell?
I am glad enough that the Holy Paladin in my guild never did that to me. He's a good Holy Paladin.
Yeah. Well, I hope.
He's smart enough not to do that.
I'm hoping I made it clear. Never ever do that to me. I will not die. If I do die, it's my fault. It's not like I die regularly. I almost never die, unless it's a wipe, and even then, I'm one of the last ones.
We are an immortal class.
So I will look after myself. I don't need anyone's lay on hands.
Like we are an immortal spec. I think we should be having one of the lowest death rates during progress. Because we are just like 2 times.
Well, we should do, really. I mean, I do have to use Pride as on Mythic 8 now, because I get the green debuff when I go up to the ship, which admittedly is not right at the start, it's the third one. But then there's a particular part where as soon as I come out of the ship, I'm on the top thing. And then there's one of the big roundy robot things, I've forgotten the name. And I have to chase, we always take ages to kill it, because I think a lot of people are slow getting up. So I'm always virtually at the bottom by the time I've killed it. And then there's another ad at the top, and usually we have one healer there, and they're not always near me. So I always fear for my life. So the first couple of times I did Mythic, I died. So I just thought, that's it, I'm using Pride as from now on.
I think you should use, you should get the blue debuff. Because it's like...
Oh, an orb's amazing.
Yeah, it's the best debuff to get as a melee. What does the green do?
The green gives basically everything. Whenever the Paraxis fires anything, it's on you. So whenever it fancies firing one of those things that does the green circle around you and blows up, it'll do it on you. Whenever it fancies firing a beam that chases you around, it'll do it on you. You are basically a magnet for everything. So you get...
Shouldn't a healer get that green thingy?
Possibly.
Because he can heal himself.
Possibly, but it's me that gets it. So, which is fine, because, as I say, we kill it, and I've now learnt just to wear Pride as, and it's all good. I don't have an issue. But before I used Pride as, I died. I don't have to use... Because the other thing as well, I can't use the cloak at the moment because I'm still having to wear 4 set plus 2 set anyway. The cloak is a downgrade for me. So, plus the fact I've got a 980 bloody tier cloak, so it might always be a downgrade. So the legendary I'm getting rid of is Chain of Thrain. Well, you don't really need Chain of Thrain because nothing lasts long enough for you to be able to make good use out of wings anyway. Yeah. So it's not even that big a deal.
I'm using wings on that fight when I go to the ship. So I can
I use it on the ship. Fast. I can basically use it off cooldown, and it's fine on the ship as well.
Is it? Because you're on the third.
I'm on the third one.
So when I'm on the first, I just save my wings and kill that one. After it dies, I just use it off CD. Yeah.
Anyone else annoyed with how judgment works? Do you mean with regards to debuff? Mikinorum. I don't think there'll be any hopes that they'll change our mastery in the next expansion. I think it's as it is now.
I hope they alter it a bit, to be honest. Like,
I mean, the thing is, like on a single target fight, it's okay. Because as soon as you've got above like 20% haste, it's sort of okay anyway. Because the gap, the downtime isn't that great, and you can use that downtime to build, to use builders. But it was annoying when I was leveling, because obviously one thing that happens as you level is every time you ding, obviously your haste rating is worth now less. So your haste plummets. It got down to about 5% or something crap. And it was like wading through treacle with the judgment then. But before even Emerald Nightmare opened, you've quickly got it up to about 20% or so.
I don't even remember how Emerald Nightmare went. Like how the stat-wise went. It's been so long.
Before the raid, if we got the haste up to a reasonable level, it was sort of okay.
Yeah. But the legendary, like I really got the worst stick of the legendary department. I progressed the entire thing with Silvers and the Freedom build.
Yeah, it was. It's target switching I don't like. Like on Kingaroth, for example, there are some times where the ad's about to spawn, and I know if I use Judgment, I'll have to delay or use Templar's Verdict without the Judgment debuff on the ad, or I'm not doing as much damage on the body. Like, I'd like it to be seamless. I'd like to just be able to do damage on the boss, and then switch to the ad. But I have to sort of think about where my judgment is. And obviously the ad has to die very quickly. So if anything, I have to prioritise having judgment ready for the ad. So when we've got to switch targets, it's really annoying, the judgment mechanic.
Maybe if you pre-wing, like, let's say, before he does the laser beam.
I do that for the first ad, but always not so much for the second. The reason being that it's also really important to get the third ad, and I can usually get across quickly with some wings still up for the third ad.
Do you hero on the third or second?
We hero on the third. We pot, second pot on the second, and hero on the third.
Yeah. I mean, that problem you won't really have it with high haste levels.
Yeah, mine's still I'd quite like much higher haste levels, but I just can't get
me too.
Well itemized gear. I've got a few bits now. I'd really love the legs. I'd like to get the legs. Losing the passive spread of our judgment in BF. Well, we don't necessarily know that. I still think they haven't really properly looked at Rets yet. I don't think anyone's actually sat down and really thought about paladins yet, because we're not high priority. But the spreading of judgment is... I mean, there's two things that are going to be a significant change to us. There's the spreading of judgment, and there's also Divine Storm going 20 yards forwards. Those will have a material effect on how we play, won't they?
Hello, Fidar Roman, and I think like if they're going to remove something like that 2-target best line, I think they might compensate it in another place, most likely. Like, I don't think they'll just, I'm gonna take the one extra judgment and give you nothing in return, sort of thing. It's just like, it doesn't work like that way at all.
Well, Skeletor, we were high priority in Legion, because when Legion Alpha came out, I was in the second wave. I was quite lucky. And there were not many specs available to play, but Ret was one of them. So they brought us out quite early. And then monkeyed about with it every week. I was in just about early enough to remember being able to use, well, Turalian's Might, as they called it. They called it Lothar's Might first, didn't they? And then it was gone. It's removed. It didn't even get any really negative press, so it wasn't a great ability. But I think someone realised it was a movement speed thing, even though it did damage. So, D3 Fiend what is that name even? Never mind. About TOS 4 set, I have high enough Mythic Titan Forges for TOS that baseline Mythic and Taurus tier with Cloak is not an upgrade. My guild is having super slow Mythic progress as tier 3 out of 11. 3 out of 11? So
Is it normal or heroic 3 out of 11?
Yeah. No, it says Mythic actually, sorry.
Oh.
Should I just try farming TOS and try to just abandon any idea of Antaurus 4 set?
No. Keep farming Antaurus.
I mean, I still don't have the 4 set, but that's because Imanar's an arsehole.
Yeah. Like, believe in the RNGs and he will give you the loot.
But, so, yeah, I mean, eventually you'll get high enough item level that it'll be worthwhile.
Yeah.
22nd Crusade. Well, I think that's quite good. You know, Crusade in Legion has just... It's been impossible to balance as a... They might as well have just made it baseline, quite frankly, because there's no point in having it as a talent. And they did this before it launched as well. They knew this because they kept trying to tune how much haste and damage it did, and they tuned it on. It was too powerful. And then they tuned it a bit down, and it actually got to the point where it was worse than not having a talent at all. It was actually worse than baseline Avenging Wrath. So that should have told them that no matter what values they put in, it's either so strong you've got to take it, or too weak that you'd never take it. Whereas I think a lot of that came from the fact that you extend the duration with the relic traits. Not relic traits. Well, sometimes you do. The Ashbringer traits, I meant. Now, at 20 seconds, it might be possible to tune it. It might be okay. It's the same as, I suppose... Sorry, go on.
Like, you had... Like, Crusade is an entire issue in its own. Like, the thing that made it so powerful is our weapon. Since they're removing the weapon, its value is going down so hugely. I don't think Crusade will stay the same. Like, I think they will do something to it.
I mean, there's a few things that our Ashbringer messes up that might not be messed up. Like execution sentence, for example, is messed up because we have so many things buffing Templar's Verdict.
Yes.
Now, if we don't have all those things, you might actually have a situation where on a pure single target fight, you can take execution sentence.
Like which fight now? I think the only time I took execution sentence was when they buffed it hugely and it did like 6 million damage when... Yeah, that's the only time.
But if we didn't have our Ashbringer, then actually it might be okay. Because it was, wasn't it? Before Legion came out, you know, when you're still doing Hellfire Citadel and we had like a month to use the new abilities, but obviously we didn't have the Ashbringer. There were times when I was using execution sentence then.
It wasn't a baseline ability? I thought it was baseline.
Not when we had the pre-expansion. No.
I don't know. I have...
Also, Justicar's Vengeance. Justicar's Vengeance could actually, at a certain point, be worthwhile using as well. And again, that's another one that... I mean, it's still good. I still use it, but I just treat it as a heal. You don't actually use it for damage.
It's good for outer activities, you know.
Yeah.
Even for World PvP as well. Stunning.
I use it even on raids because there are times when actually it does save my life.
Well, like I hope, like back to the Crusade topic, like as Urth said, they should give it the maybe haste and damage, flat damage buff. Like, I don't think the current Crusade won't make it to BFA in its current state without the Ashbringer. Like, it buffs it too much.
Yeah.
If you remove that thing, it just dies. That's what I think. And
I mean, it's worth...
Wake of Ashes as a talent instead of baseline will kill your stacking process in using Crusade. Like, you get how many? Like, you get 6 stacks out of Wake of Ashes if you use Arcane Torrent. So that's 6 stacks worth of GCDs are gone.
I mean, it's worth
And
thinking
BFA
that
heads.
where Paladins were at the start of Legion Alpha and where they ended up was very different. So, you know, there's every possibility that it could still look very different by the time BFA goes live, as long as they get the feedback. I mean, the only effective feedback Blizzard got, unfortunately, because, for example, there's not enough people moaning about Greater Blessing of Might, that's why that went live. But one thing, it's worth bearing in mind that even just a few weeks before Legion went live, it was only a few weeks beforehand, we had no baseline movement speed increase. Divine Steed was a talent, it was not baseline. And then they made it baseline really at the last minute, and then made Cavalier give us 2 charges of it instead of 1. So there was a point there when our movement was even worse than Death Knight's, because we had nothing. Our movement speed baseline utility was Blessing of Freedom.
And you can't even speak to them properly because they focus on the NA side and they leave the EU side like almost negligible.
Well,
non-existent. So you can't communicate the idea properly to them or your feedback at all.
Yeah.
Like you will have to tell NA, your NA.
Well, exactly. You have to persuade people to post on the NA forums. Except for, I mean, because that's what needs to happen as well. I think where most of the people did start then providing feedback was only when they were in it, and that's too late. You need to do it early. It needs to be done quite early. Which means people have to post. They can't obviously you can't post on the BFA forums unless you're in it. So people just have to do it in the normal channels and hope it gets read. If enough people post, I was saying this last week, if enough people post, if 1,000 people post a thing on a forum, on the same one, obviously don't make 1,000 posts, then they have to take notice. And you're not going to tell me there's not 1,000 paladins would be willing to spend 5 minutes of their time going on a forum and saying, remove the Retribution passive.
Retribution passive, I think it should stay with the damage part taken away.
Oh, yeah, and that's fine, yeah. If they're going to insist it's class fantasy, we can have the damage reduction. No one's going to complain about getting 30% damage reduction when someone dies.
Not at all.
That's all fine and dandy. It could even give us a movement boost. What about giving us a movement boost instead? That would be fine too.
Like having your parse be good just because your guild dies for you is not really the ideal play style at all. Like it's back madness. In a Nighthold, I used to tell my shaman to die to me on some bosses, which
I mean, all of my, I mean, I don't pass as a thing anyway, but all of my best ones, this expansion, every single one, it's been where it's been carnage. I mean, literally, I remember when I was streaming because the best one for it in Tomb of Sargeras was Sisters, and I remember there was one particular one I was streaming, it was Sister Skill, and it was just carnage. People were dying left, right, and centre, and at the end of it, I said, right, let's have a look at the log of that, because I'll bet you that's an orange pass, easy, just because so many had died, and it was just literally because so many had died there, and that was it.
I didn't really like the Sisters fight because it had the graphics when the blades hit the raid where it made me feel sick. Those slight explosions that kept happening around the...
There were a lot of things, that flared, and with the settings I had on it anyway, it wasn't always straightforward to try and see what was going on, certainly.
Wasn't a great experience at all. Like TOS was just a black hole.
Yeah, there wasn't. Yeah, I mean, I didn't like it at all. Too much of it was just seemed to be waiting for people to not mess up my experience of it. If you can actually kill it, because it was quite a good one in a way from the point of view of there were if you were whoring, then you would fail the mechanics and you would wipe the raid. But it didn't seem to stop a lot of people in my guild anyway.
I think that like when it was being designed, they had a huge poster that was written rogue all over it, so they made the raid just for rogues. So
yes. So let's have a look. Let's talk about execution sentence not scaling with weapon damage as well. Yeah, that is a problem, because especially when you've got people who maybe, because you will get, I know Blizzard don't want this anyway, where people have the cookie cutter talent set, even though my talents never change these days. What did change? I changed something recently, and then I forgot to. I changed, on Mythic A&R this week. I decided to take Word of Glory, and then the problem was, because I'm not used to changing my talents at all, I then forgot to change it back at first. I just forgot to change it back. And then, even when I did change it back, I forgot to read, because I would have Word of Glory and Justicar's Vengeance on the same, and when it comes to it, Eye for an Eye, when I take that, on the same bind. And I'd forgotten to rebind it. And I could actually just make a macro to automatically use the one that you've got. But I so rarely change that it wasn't worth it. And there is always going to be a cookie cutter build, but the problem is that Blizzard don't accept that. But the issue with execution sentence, so if you've got something that's not based on weapon damage and it's competing with something that is, the issue is someone could say, when should I take execution sentence? And then the answer is going to have to be the Simit for you, because it's going to be personal. There's a lot of people haven't really liked this expansion. The response, Simit.
I think execution centers, like, unless it is a huge, like it's an outlier in damage, I don't think it's worth taking it.
It isn't at the moment, but it may be in BFA. That's the thing.
Yeah, it may be. But right now, like, it's an extra button that doesn't, like, maybe, like, you have there's a lot of things that you should think about while using it, like, oh, would it hit during the judgment window, or you think that you would rather use it on an ad or on the boss, like which one you want to kill first? Would the ad die before execution hits? Like, just too much work for, like, almost no damage at all, no damage increase at all, compared to using a passive, the passive time, which just like is the static increase. Like, to make execution centers work, they should change how it scales. Not like they should include the weapon damage scale as well. And
well, what they should have done was, and all the abilities that buff. I mean, they should have had just as many things buffing execution sentence as they did Templar's Verdict.
Yeah,
but they didn't. I mean, I don't actually know to what extent they're really committed to having. They keep saying they don't want dead talents. They keep saying they want them to be useful. But the problem is that they also will sometimes say that such and such a thing is useful when no one ever takes it. I mean, you just have to look. And I know the two people who chiefly did this are not there anymore. But the massive defense, aggressive defense they put up for Holy Wrath during the Legion Alpha as well.
Wait, someone actually defended it. I don't think I remember. It was a trash talent. It's a dead talent, and I'm glad that it's getting removed. Like, it's a dead talent that even got nerfed.
Yeah. Well, it did, didn't it? I mean, there was a point. See, I'm actually quite glad it was a dead talent, because there was a point in Legion, either Alpha or Beta, I can't remember, testing, let's say. It's all Beta anyway, really. There was a point where people were seriously talking about it as being one we'd have to take. But the problem with that is it's on a cooldown, which means you have to... It's like Shield of Vengeance. You've got to use it. And especially if you take it as... At least Shield of Vengeance is like baseline. If you take it as a talent, that means every... What was it? 3-minute cooldown? Can't remember now. Never take it. Every 3 minutes, you've got to persuade something to almost kill you. All right, it's not that bad now because there's a cap on the amount of damage it does. But you've still got to take a hell of a lot of damage. And there's not many ways to do that.
And your healers shouldn't heal you as well. So.
Oh, that's fine. My healers don't heal me. That's okay. Even though I give at least one of them Blessing of Wisdom. But the fact that you'd have to engineer a massive drop in health every 3 minutes was just beyond ridiculous. I mean, what it'd mean is very likely what you'd want to do on the pull. And again, this would eliminate... Because at the time, remember, Divine Intervention also gave our bubble a 2.5 minute cooldown, didn't it?
Yep.
So what you'd want to do... Yeah, on the pull, you would want to be the one to pull the boss, let it smash your face in, Divine Intervention proc, and then Holy Wrath, and then let everyone else take over. I mean, that would be a very messy start to every fight.
It's a dead talent, just, you know.
Yeah, well, it is literally dead now. But the problem is they were told that beforehand, and they did. It's one of those things where they didn't listen. Greater Blessing of Might didn't listen. Holy Wrath didn't listen. I know it's a pride thing, and it could easily happen again. And it you know. But anyway. What's this? Execution sentence. What if it stayed at 3 holy power, but DP procs reset the cooldown? It's got quite a short cooldown as it is, though, hasn't it? You'd just be spamming it, wouldn't you? You'd have them. It'd be like a sonic boom of execution sentences. Because sometimes you get a fair old string of DP procs. You would have. It says it won't be a sonic boom. It'd be a Cherenkov radiation, wouldn't it? Just of light all catching up to each other.
You can't let Blizzard give us this fun. No. It's impossible.
No. Holy Wrath is even fun. Well, it wouldn't be fun in a PvE situation now. I mean, that's what used to get me. It's not at all.
And they nerfed it in the PvP scene as well, so.
Yeah, well, for PvP, it's one of those. It's a. I mean, it looked like a PvP talent even, and yet they nerfed it to be pointless in PvP as well.
I think it was good at some point in PvP, maybe at the early Legion, but then after they nerfed it a couple of times, it just fell down.
Yeah, I mean, to begin with, when it first went out, when the alpha first went out, Rets were. I don't really pay much attention to PvP, but I think they were pretty broken for PvP because you had eye for an eye, so anyone physically attacking you, like a warrior or something, would be getting a smash in the face for doing it. And then if they actually managed to get your health down low, you could Holy Wrath, and that would basically kill them before they put the cap on it. Because it did straight up... Hang on, I might be getting this wrong now. I think it did something like 4 times your missing health or something stupid before they reduced it to double your missing health. And then they put a cap on it again as well. Yeah. But it was a guaranteed kill of someone. If you waited for them to get you low enough down, health down, you would just kill them. It was a one shot. I don't have an issue with warriors. I've almost never been killed by a warrior in PvP, and when I have, they've ganged up on me. Vajira did a video on the Ret PvP with Holy Wrath in Legion Beta. It doesn't surprise me. It must have been absolutely horrendous.
Vajira. I didn't know he played Ret. I thought he was just a warrior guy.
Well, I think most PvP warriors are PvP warriors because they like to smash faces really hard. So it wouldn't surprise me that a PvP warrior would try out Ret in the alpha when it had something like Eye for an Eye and Holy Wrath. Well, actually, Crusader Brady, that's an interesting point. Holy Wrath isn't even fun, even when you stack stamina, sorry. There was I mean, what imagine there was a situation where it was mathematically a strong talent to use for DPS. You'd have to engineer your near death to use it. And in actual fact, I'm not saying this would have happened, but let's say your BIS DPS trinket when using it, not trinket, sorry. Well, trinket, yeah. You'd want to stack stamina trinkets, but also maybe even take a stamina flask. I mean, I suspect that probably wouldn't have been the case, but yeah, it wouldn't be impossible. My hype for the Arena EU Cup. I'm not personally, because I'm not interested in PvP in this game. I don't actually like PvP in WoW. I think it's a bit boring.
Yeah.
So I'm all about the PvE. And effectively raiding. Raiding is the big thing that for me World of Warcraft gets right.
So, like, I do, like, from time to time some 2S or RPGs. I'm not really invested into it. Oh, nice conquest. Best of luck, man.
Mm. What about the questing and lore? Oh, well, the leveling experience I like as well. But you get a bit bored of that once you've done it 5 or 6 times.
No, like the questing and lore, you finish it in beta slowly.
Yeah. Well, no, I still enjoy it then because it's still always different because you don't do things in the right order when you're testing.
Yeah, but when the life hits, you blitz through everything to get starting and gearing up for the first raid.
Oh, yeah.
But,
well, I don't have the option of that because they always bring it out when I go back to work, so I have to fit it around work. So there's no point in me even trying to rush, even though I always feel like I'm rushing, because when what do you have? You have 2 weeks. They give you 2 weeks before the first raid will open. In that time, I had to gear up, level and gear up 2 characters, one for the split runs. And in another expansion, all right, it'd be a bit of a rush, but you can manage it. The problem with Legion was you could always get better gear because of Titan Forging and because of legendaries. So every minute I spent on my Demon Hunter, which was my split raid alt at the time, and not on my Ret, I was thinking I could be missing out on getting some better gear on my Ret.
yes.
But you had to do it because I needed it for the split runs as well. So it's a massive nightmare. And also, you know, there's other people in the guild who can take time off work, and they leveled up in the first night. You know, I woke up for work the next day. Other people in the guild were already 110.
I mean, you can take your laptop with you to the work. And just, your downtime, living up or something.
So, well, what I had to do is just make sure I lived here on this. As soon as I'd finished at work, I'd be straight home, and I'd be here.
Yeah.
You know, I would eat pot noodles. I have a kettle there, and a place at the other end of the desk where I can store pot noodles and biscuits. And that was what I did.
So yeah, for the story and lore, you can get it out of the system by just playing the beta slowly at your pace.
Well,
as soon as the life hit and you're a raider in a raiding guild that is aiming for ranks, you just blitz through everything. Okay.
Tier 18 2 set should have been baseline. Which, hang on. Was that the charges on Avenging Wrath?
Yeah, 3 charges. I used it for Emerald Nightmare, by the way. It was so great for Emerald Nightmare until they nerfed it.
I didn't. I did try using it on, was it Ursoc the bear? But I had so little health. It's actually quite funny because there was both me. The enhancement shaman in the guild was also using his, because the shaman one apparently did something cunning, and he kept dying because, again, really low stamina because of it, and I wasn't. But then on the kill, I actually did die, so I thought, sod it, I'm not using it again.
No, like, I had the highest Titan Forge on it. Tier 18, I used the highest Titan Forge 2 pieces.
No, 18 was Hellfire Citadel.
No, yeah. I used it for Emerald Nightmare. It was fun until they nerfed it, like maybe second week into the mythic, I think.
Well, I don't understand why with something like that they don't disable them as soon as you get to like the following expansion. So if it's and Warlords of Draenor one, as high Dago, as soon as you get to 110, the set bonuses should just be disabled. You know, you can use them up to 110, but after that, it's just a piece of gear with some crap stats on it. I don't understand why they don't do that. They always just think to themselves, oh, it won't be worth the trade-off, and yet they're always wrong. They said the same thing with Arcano Crystal, didn't they? They said, oh, yeah, you know, yeah, it's got too high a stat budget. But, you know, there's going to come a time where 860 is not really going to be valuable, and you're going to have to be really lucky to get a Titan Forge one, so we'll leave it as it is. And then they gave you a way to get 910 ones.
Yeah. Didn't Rubes also, back in HFC, use, like, the mop tire pieces to get, like, I think,
sure.
what was it name?
Subtlety,
maybe? Yeah, they used all tire pieces from the Mist of Pandaria to get more DPS during the opener. Like, they snapshot the abilities, then they switch it to gear right before the pull.
But I mean, it's just one of those things that's so easily dealt with. You just, you know, as soon as you get to the next expansion's level cap, you just disable them. They just become disabled.
I mean, I think there's, like, in the next expansion, there's no more tire. So I think they'll just disable this as soon as we hit 120.
Well, yeah, it remains to see if they do that, but they could. I mean, you might argue they won't need to, because if the bonuses from the Azerite armor are decent, which you would think they will be, then they occupy tier slots anyway.
It occupies 3 out of the 6 slots, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you still have, like...
You could still potentially use a 2 set for something.
We'll see until then.
I mean, there was... Because there was a thing... There was all sorts of fun and games being done with the set bonus. Still during Hellfire Citadel, but when we had all our abilities... So a month before the expansion comes out, they bring out a pre-expansion patch and you get all your new abilities. And with Crusade, I think you had to be quite lucky though. I was able to replicate it sometimes, but not consistently. Where you had your chargers, you could like use the Crusade talent, use that, get to the end of it, and then if you hit it really quickly for the next one, you could actually maintain your stacks, couldn't you?
Yeah, it was like I used to do that as well. I think there was a way, I forgot about it. Where you could
I think it was just good timing because I couldn't do it consistently.
Like I used to click both with the Crusade and use the action bar, like 2 ways of trying to activate it, and it usually works. Like both pressing the keyboard and clicking at the same time in a rapid movement, just to get that chain out. And it used to work, so it was good. Like I liked HFC Ret with the divine. What was the final verdict? It was nice. Seraphim was nice. Too sad that they removed them.
I think the thing is, Cigarette would say entire nerfing old stuff and pushing new stuff is what makes WoW less of an MMO. It's just that WoW is a very loot-driven game. It's very gear-driven. So they want you to get the new stuff. So they don't want you using the old stuff. That's just how they are now. It wasn't as big a thing in vanilla, of course. I mean, you would still have people in Nax doing Molten Core every now and then for certain things, but that's just how it is now. But I don't think it's got anything to do with whether it's an MMO or not. It's irrelevant for that. If something's an MMO, if it encourages large-scale player groups, really, or interaction with other players on a large scale. Whether WoW does that is another matter, Whether any MMO does that is another matter. Yeah, Crusade Raider is super random if you could chain it. I found the same. That it was a little bit hit and miss for me. For TOS, the best way to play Elemental Shaman was with 2-piece tier 18, was it?
Yeah.
I don't think we had an Elemental Shaman, I'm not sure. Or did we? Hang on, am I forgetting someone? If we did, I wouldn't have paid very much attention to them. The only thing they cast is Chain Lightning anyway.
I don't think TOS had too much AoE fights for an Elemental Shaman to shine. Like, apart from...
there wasn't a lot of AoE stuff.
Boss.
Well, the problem would be as well, like the way... Because I know with Mistress Azine, some guilds did it with just bursting the ads down. The way we did it was by not allowing anyone to touch the ads, because we had enough passive cleave that it was already dodgy about whether we'd have any ads up when we needed them on Mythic. So an Elemental Shaman would have been very miserable on that fight.
Yeah. Same here, we didn't allow people like to... The passive cleave was too huge. Maybe we had like 1 or 2 people on the ad duty. Basically the hunters.
Well, we didn't even, because we so much. We even had to ban our warriors from using Moonglaze, which was a single target DPS increase for them, because they were just dying. Well, the large gear gap between them arguably has as much to do with the fact that there's 4 difficulties of raiding for each raid. So,
and hopefully BFA will be better even now than now for Reds. I hope so. At least there's no more legendary systems where, like, if you get the...
No, and also we had the news in the last week, which was very good for us, that weapons will not Titan Forge.
That's bad news for me. It's good for you, bad news for me, because
it's definitely good for me.
Sure
mine don't Titan Forge it. Mine haven't Titan Forged in Legion.
Mine will absolutely Titan Forge in the first week. Yeah. I'm sure of that. So it was a bad news for me.
I mean, it's actually... See, I don't know if it's just me being cynical. In terms of what they said in that Q&A, in theory it sounds quite good for Res. Apart from the auras. I think the auras is a misstep, but it's going to happen. So there's no point going on about that. But they've said that utility should be class-wide, and half our problem has been that there are other specs of Paladin, like the roles, that have better utility than us. In fact, for most of Legion, ours was useless. But and then we've now got, in fact, Greater Blessing of Wisdom obviously is now a good... Apparently it's a good one. I don't know. I'm not a healer. Apparently they go mad for it. I remember offering to sit on Coven this week because we had so many melee.
Yeah.
And I was told, no, we need Blessing of Wisdom. So I thought, oh, right, okay. Nice and station.
No, like, I have my healer, his priest. Like, it's so good for priests. And he really loves the wisdom. Like, I think part of me staying in the raid was because of him nagging the officer team, telling them that he needs the wisdom or he can't heal properly. So, shout out to Nali.
I mean, this week I was giving mine to a priest. I have to be a little bit careful, though, because there's two healing priests in our guild, and one of them's a gnome. I have to make sure I don't give it to that one. Because, you know, I'm not having that one. So, but fortunately, the one I end up giving it to is not, so that's fine. Honestly, very glad that the Azerite armor and weapons can't Titan Forge. Yes, so am I. Yeah, the Azerite armor as well. Because we're still not absolutely sure. I don't think Blizzard are, to be honest. We're still not absolutely sure exactly how we're going to get the ones we want. Because there still exists the possibility that the one we'd really want might not, maybe, I don't know, for the Azerite armor, maybe, because, or there was a fear, should we say, there was a fear that potentially what you would want is from the dungeon, and you'd be farming that dungeon. Now, the fact that weapons can't Titan Forge probably reduces the reliance on that now.
I don't know. Like, as long as I just hope that the weapon drops from the raids will have good stats and not just some random shitty one that might turn out later. I don't know. But for me, like, hearing that they want Titan Forge was just a bummer. Like, I thought I might be able to Titan Forge a two-hand.
Well, they're reducing the chance of Titan Forge even for the slots that it can work on now. But I mean, that's obviously now, I suppose, would that be 5 slots that can't? Because there's the Heart of Azeroth itself, the neck. Yeah. And then you've got your 3 Azerite armor pieces, and now the weapon.
Yeah, 5 slots that can't Titan Forge.
And could you imagine as well, I mean, it's one thing for us, obviously it would have been bad for us, Titan Forge weapons, because weapon item level has such a major effect. What about someone who dual wields? That would have been horrendous.
Like Frost Death Knights or Fury.
Yeah. Actually, Fury, I know what's going to happen. We're going to have to go back to competing on loot for 2-handers with bloody Fury Warriors again.
Yeah.
Where they want 2 of them, and they're not happy with 1, they want 2.
Yes. This would be a nightmare. And don't forget, we will also get a legendary slot like every expansion. So, like 4 plus 5, I think. No, 6. You have 6 slots that can't Titan Forge. Assuming a legendary will be take 1 slot as well. Hopefully it's 1 legendary, not like 3 or 2.
I don't know. At the moment, they haven't said there's going to be any at all. But they haven't.
I did hear that they will use. No, like they. Maybe I read it somewhere that it's just they will return to the old way.
Because in that Forbes interview, they were asked the direct question: "Are there going to be any legendaries?" And they talked about the Azerite armor system is going to do what legendaries and artifacts did in Legion,
so
which wasn't a flat denial.
Chain. Like there won't be a quest chain like in Mist of Pandaria for a legendary item then.
It doesn't. You would have thought they'd have said, if they were asked the direct question, is there going to be legendaries, and they're planning to put anything in at all, they probably should have said at that point. So I'm guessing not. What are our thoughts on talent options to make a Shockadin version of Ret?
This is the holy question.
It is really, isn't it? You couldn't put it in a Ret talent tree. I'd rather just have a 4th spec, a ranged spec. I'd be okay with that.
I would love to have a ranged spec as a 4th spec. It's so nice. Like it could solve a lot of problems. Our roster is full of melee. It's no problem. I can switch to ranged.
Yeah, exactly.
And vice versa. Like shooting holy arrows or something.
Well, there's already enough abilities we could use. What did they have before? I've forgotten what it was now. Holy Paladins, a couple of expansions ago. There was a cast, so the cast which could actually work very much like Ret, but at range you have your holy you could still have it holy power based. You'd have your holy power builders and your holy power spenders. They would just be ranged ones.
Yep.
And have a cast time on the builders, perhaps. And maybe a cast.
Denounce. Holy Paladins had Denounce. It's a cast.
Denounce, that was it. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think of. But they don't seem very keen on the idea. But I think there's a video I still keep meaning to do. I'm going to get it done next week, I promise. Maybe. Actually, no, I'm not going to promise, because whenever I do that, I never get it done. Like we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. The bottom line is there's too many melee specs. There's too many melee classes, sorry. Too many melee classes. It wouldn't be as big a deal if those classes also had access to a range spec. So maybe they should just give all the melee classes instead of like with hunters, they created a melee spec out of a ranged class. Why don't they do it the other way around? Because you could easily imagine ranged specs for all of the classes.
Yep, like it's even easier for paladins. Imagine having a holy bow shooting holy stuff.
Yeah,
that will be great.
For me, it could work in almost exactly the same way. You just replace the spells with ranged versions that have a cast, so that again you've got that range feeling. You don't need fillers as such. You just have a cycle, McNorm, for me, of builders and spenders like we do now, still with the judgment debuff. The judgment debuff's ranged anyway. Sort of the same basic things. You call them something different, and they work at range, but they've got a cast time, something like that. Axe throwing warriors, absolutely. Axe throwing warriors, you can have DK. Like when I first saw DKs in Wrath of the Lich King, when they first did like a teaser trailer thing, I thought that they had a ranged spec because I saw a Death Knight in some gameplay thing, and it was casting Death and Decay and Death Coil and stuff like that, and sending ghouls off, and it was doing all of this from ranged, and I thought it was going to have a ranged spec, but it didn't. Spam Judgment to get 5. No. Judgment would do what Judgment does now. It would put the debuff on it. We would use something else. Instead of Crusader Strike, it could be Crusader Blast or something stupid like that. Just have them the same ability. That way they don't even have to create new abilities. They just have to get a different name for them. They would have to balance it differently because obviously you'd have cast times in there.
Yep.
But there's no reason on earth why it couldn't work in exactly the same way. They don't have to think about an alternate class system. They could have it work in exactly the same way as Ret. Change the name of the abilities, change the icons, and have them work at ranged with a cast time. For the builders, I think you can still get away with instant casts on the spenders.
Yeah. As Urs said, you can be like Gilgamesh from the Fate series.
Yeah.
With 100 swords sticking from behind you.
Yes.
That would be really nice. Hopefully BFA comes out really nice. And they will listen, and I really have hope that they will listen to our feedback this time, unlike Legion, where Ret came out as a horrendous spec at the start, then it slightly became better over the duration of the expansion, which should have been from the get-go, instead of like taking all of this time to reach to this current spot. Like right now, Ret is so fine. I don't problem with it.
Yeah, Eris. No, I don't see them doing it either. Yeah, I think Blizzard always have this thing though. Like people go, "Oh, why do they hate Rets so much?" I don't think they do hate Rets, but I do think they fear Rets because it's such a popular spec. I think they worry that there's already, from their point of view, lots and lots of people playing it, and I think they just worry that it might encourage more people to play it, and then you end up with too many of them.
It's okay. The more Reds, the better, to be honest.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The more the better. Then
our voices will be heard more.
Exactly. I don't think Blizzard are into that though. I think they just say there's loads of people play Paladins, loads of people play Retribution Paladins, loads of people play human Retribution Paladins, and Chris Metzen apparently is one of them. Excellent.
Yep.
Although he was tweeting his horse the other day, and it was in holy spec, so he's obviously, he's obviously fine mixing it up a bit because he had a silver hand on his back.
Yeah. He said he had a red spec, so I would assume he was like I thought he played a shaman or like Thrall because he's the Thrall voice actor.
But so no, he'd actually created. I wish I could find it now.
Actually, that's great. Like,
and also, I don't know whether anyone noticed. There's a few things in that Forbes interview, and I'm not sure if people really noticed it. But obviously we know Thrall is in battle for Azeroth because he's going to be carrying around a load of ashes, Vol'jin's ashes. So we sort of guessed that Chris Metzen would be probably still coming in just to do the voice bits on that, bit of part-time work. But in that interview, and I know Afrasiabi was saying a lot of weird things that you're probably better off ignoring, but he said that Chris Metzen's coming back. Now, again, that could just literally mean just to do the voice thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was about.
I mean, I hope, like, if he comes back, we'll see Thrall back in action as being the Green Jesus.
Yeah. Well,
As
I
soon
mean, he
as
has
you
got a
see
role
Thrall-
to play in it because he's going to be continuing that Vol'jin story.
Hopefully, he becomes back being the leader of the Horde after we kill Sylvanas. Like, you know, she's eventually going to get burned.
Yeah.
She's starting the war in BFA. But you know what happens with the guy who starts the war? He always ends up losing.
Right, hang on. Sorry, I found it. I found it. Oh my god. No, sorry, I'm messing about. Right. There he is. There's Chris Metzen. That's what he tweeted out earlier this week. But that's a holy paladin.
Yep.
And with the stupid new horse as well. Don't like the new horse. Should have been a Pegasus mount for us. Hang on.
I
Cigarette
really like the
Edward.
horse, to be honest. I really liked it. Like the way, even the animation where it leaves a footprint behind it while it's flying.
Yes.
It really looked nice.
But it's flying without wings. We have horses that fly without wings, and we have paladin horses that don't fly or have wings. What we didn't have was a paladin horse with wings. Anyway, what do you mean, Cigarette Ward? The Alliance started the war. How did the Alliance start the war? There was no war before the Horde attacked.
Horde burned down their tree, so the Alliance retreated.
Yeah.
I mean, like, fought back and took Undercity back. That's what I know. Like, she started the war. Then again, I am with the Alliance, so whatever they do, it's okay.
Well, that was another thing, yeah, because there was lots of things that I was trying to read between the lines in that interview. Because obviously at the moment, unless I'm missing something, we don't know who actually sets fire to the tree. We're probably guessing it wasn't an inside job. And then, because I was assuming Sylvanas, because obviously we know from that synopsis, that thing in the book, that we know she's looking to start the war. We know the Horde's going to start it because we're basically they were told that at BlizzCon. But it was talking about specifically the Tauren. Afrasiabi was talking specifically about the Tauren having a grudge against the Night Elves. So I'm wondering if the Tauren set fire to the tree.
I think I read a theory that says, like, you know how the world trees are always connected with the old gods, like how
Yeah.
Emerald Nightmare happened, because old god corrupted their world tree.
Yeah.
So I think Sylvanas just wanted to burn that one, so we don't get another Emerald Dream.
No, I don't know. There's no noble motive. That's just Horde players trying to make out that it's not going to be their fault.
That's the only thing that I read about regarding it, when they are trying to redeem their actions. But yeah.
Oh yeah, Dego, that's a good point. Yeah, Tauren, Sunwalkers, Sun Cows, they'll get a giant magnifying glass and set fire to it. That'll be how it goes down. Oh, I've worked it out. That's cracking. All we have together.
At least we take Undercity back. I mean, we should clean.
Well, we don't take it back. We just turn it into rubble. That's that's the equivalent of, well, no one's going to have it then. If we can't have it, no one's having it. The Tauren respect nature too much to do it. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see. It could also be the trolls. He did also mention the trolls don't like night elves because night elves nick their lands. But then, to be fair, everyone's nicked the trolls' lands because they used to own everything. They used to be the race, the civilized race. So you could argue they've got a grudge against everyone. Why did the Horde burn the tree? We don't know that yet, but in the book, we know because they gave everyone at BlizzCon a short passage, or a couple of short passages, which started it all off. And it revealed Sylvanas deliberately wanted to provoke a war with Stormwind. So it doesn't prove that the burning of the tree is linked to that, but it'd be a hell of a coincidence if it were not.
You can't burn an entire country by coincidence.
No.
Or by mistake.
It's just a setup. Sylvanas trying to stop the old gods. No, this is not. Well, you'll see anyway. We'll all find out in a few months' time. Not just yet. In a few months' time, we'll all find out. Then we'll see.
Yep.
Weren't Taurans nomads? They didn't have a specific piece of land. Well, that's what I thought as well. But you know how these things get retconned all the time. So most of the stuff we know about Tauran, if you think about it, is years old. Well, almost everything else that's years old has been retconned. Sometimes it just comes out of the blue. Like Nathrazim. Nathrazim were always demons. Always were demons. But now in the official story, according to that audio drama, no, they were good sorts. That's why there's a Nathrazim Paladin in my order hall. I didn't give him permission to be there. Because they've been retconned, so they only the corrupted ones became demons. When New Balance Druids cast Sunfire and miss the Training Dummy. It's a hell of a miss, that. Mulgore is like half a continent away from the tree. But Dager, I have no idea how Night Elves could steal lands. That's just what he said.
The theory that Sylvanas burned the tree to avoid another Emerald Nightmare sounds the most plausible theory, in my opinion.
The problem is that when you read that thing in the book, which admittedly is only one bit of a chapter, she's explaining her own thoughts, and her own thoughts have got nothing to do with old gods. Her own thoughts are provoking war with the Alliance.
By the way, have you seen there was a question that says that Newman asks if all the classes have a playable allied races for their factions. Yeah, that question. And Hezekiah's answers with non-human hunters or death knight. Does that mean Zandalari paladins will be a thing?
No, he didn't. That's where people have got it wrong, because I've read it and I did a video on it yesterday. That's not what he said. What actually happened was he was asked that question and he said not death knights or demon hunters. Then the interviewer who plays a druid says, does that mean there'll be druid options? Afrasiabi said yes, but then Ian Hezekiah said, shut up, you idiot. No. So basically, they didn't actually answer the question properly at all. Because druids don't have one, and he said that druids don't either, but he didn't give it as an exclusive list. So, no. He's not saying that all of them do. At no point did he say all of them do.
Do you want them to be paladins? Those trolls?
I don't care, because I'm hoping not to have to go Horde next expansion. But if I had to go Horde, I will admit. Actually, I don't know. No, I'm trying to picture it in my head. Would I actually rather be a Zandalari Paladin than a Blood Elf Paladin? I don't think I would, if I'm honest.
But the Blood Elf, you've seen the nerf of that.
Oh yeah. I'm not talking about it in terms of how powerful the racials are. Obviously, from that point of view, yes, you'd want to be a Zandalari Paladin, but you have to consider style.
Oh, their style. I don't think the trolls being a tribesman won't fit the paladin class fantasy. Because paladins are like a fancy.
You can basically. There's only two races that you cannot write something to allow them to be, you know, that every race could be a paladin. They could write it in such a way they could. There's only 2 races where you can't do that. So yeah, you could write something in to allow Zandalari paladins, I'm sure.
But won't really. I don't think personally it will fit the theme of the paladin being the elegant and prideful.
No,
class.
I don't. And also, as I say, it's all right giving them a holy magic racial, but they still deal in death magic.
Yeah.
And a paladin has to be exclusively light magic. I know they themselves are a mixture of void and light, but the magic they pursue is always light magic. They're a bit like a Jedi. They won't, even though they can access the dark side of the Force, they don't.
I mean, I wouldn't mind them personally, but it's just like...
Yeah. Yes, there is a Night Elf Paladin in the Order Hall. And again, you know, you could argue that's just them gearing up to allow Night Elf Paladins, but they haven't yet. The Horde are a bunch of bros that help each other. You're having a laugh. It's not just the Forsaken. The Forsaken, the Goblins, and the Blood Elves all joined the Horde because of convenience. To protect themselves. They share no brotherhood with the Horde. That's pretty clear from the stories. They just do it because there's no one else they can join. And the only reason that the Orcs, the Tauren and the Trolls are pally in a genuine sense is because of Thrall. And those relationships were sorely put to the test after Garrosh worked his magic. Also, the Alliance was formed before the Horde ever existed. The Alliance existed before the Horde. So they didn't just form. You know, it was added to because of the Horde attacks.
The Undead shouldn't even be part of the Horde. I mean, they should be purged. You're no longer part of this world. Stop killing the living and stay dead, you know, sort of thing. They shouldn't have place between the factions, to be honest. Like, who would want his teammate to be a dead person who moves with magic?
Well, yes. Well, that was the thing. I mean, that's the only reason why the Forsaken couldn't join the Alliance, because of that mistrust. I mean, in theory, it could have all been explained that because they had, you know, the Forsaken didn't do any harm to the Alliance. It was the Scourge. And it could all be explained, the difference between them, to everyone apart from the Scarlet Crusade, obviously. But that's not how it was written. It was written as there's this inherent mistrust of all undead. But then again, you can also argue that on both the Horde and the Alliance, well, let's say Orcs and Humans definitely, as well as other races of them, Warlocks are also treated with mistrust. That's why they always have to be kept underground. But you can actually play a Warlock on both Horde and Alliance. So they could have written it a different way if they wanted, but they didn't want to. Everyone knows what the reality of the situation is. The reality of the situation is that there were 4 races in Warcraft 3. You had Humans, Night Elves, Forsaken, and your Orcs, which were also mixed in with Tauren and stuff. And they had to have those in World of Warcraft. So obviously Humans and Night Elves naturally went together, and you could put dwarfs in there as well. It was very difficult. You know, you could have Orcs, Tauren and Trolls, but then given that they wanted to put a 4th race on for each one, it was a little bit stuck. It's like, the Forsaken had to go in there, and it's like, well, where do you put them? They have to either join the Alliance or join the Horde. And it probably just made more sense to join the Horde. As well as just strict numbers. It's easy to think of races that could join the Alliance. Not so easy to think of ones that could join the Horde. Because only the Orcs, Tauren and Trolls naturally went together. Didn't Forsaken mistrust the Alliance because Stormwind didn't help Lordran when they were in need? Don't think that's true. Stormwind. Well, Lordaeron basically became Stormwind when Stormwind was sacked by the Horde. The survivors fled to Lordaeron. They were basically all part of the same thing. So it can't be an eternal grudge because Lordaeron actually sheltered the heroes of Stormwind and then raised an army and then retook Stormwind. Do you think the Fox people could be Palas? Oh, no. We don't even know if the Fox people are going to be a race, do we? What are they called? Vulpin or something?
I don't think, like, there are a lot of MMOs that have fox creatures as playable races. I don't think Blizzard will do that.
Don't know. You got gnomes. When you're prepared to do gnomes, you're prepared to do anything. Got pandas as well. Night elves indeed don't trust humans too much. No, they're very aloof. I wonder where they're going to relocate after their tree gets caught on fire. I mean, do you think, are they just going to move to Ashen Vale or something as their main base?
I think they will go to Stormwind.
I suppose, because, yeah. Are they trying to turn it so that Kalimdor is basically the Horde continent and Eastern Kingdoms is the Alliance one? Because if you think about it, there's a Kalimdor city going under for the Alliance and a Eastern Kingdoms one for the Horde. So there'd be no... There'd still be a city in each, wouldn't there? Because Exodar is still technically Kalimdor, even though it's on an island. And Silvermoon City is still Eastern Kingdoms, albeit cut off. Well, they go, yes. Well, I don't know where the ship with the laser is, actually. I suppose the Vindicar... Yeah, where is the Vindicar? I suppose the Vindicar is still in orbit around Azeroth, is it?
I don't think the Vindicar will be used for Battle of Azeroth.
No, I'm not. Orcs training to be paladins in Hearthglen. No, I think orcs... I don't know. I don't really see orcs. If they're going to continue along these strict racial lines, really being paladins of the future. Yes, for Lightforge Draenei, it is effectively their city, I guess. Insofar as they have a city. Remember, Void Elves don't have one, because they were kicked out of Silvermoon.
Aren't they in Stormwind right now? I didn't check. Didn't Illyria take them to Stormwind?
I think she probably would have done. It's the nearest place. It would be an act of... it would be a very bad decision if she took them to Darnassus, wouldn't it?
I thought they would be at Dalaran.
Yeah, but Dalaran's also not going to be the main hub in Battle for Azeroth, is it? That's going to be like forgotten again for a bit. Aren't orcs completely cut off from the light because of the red pox shenanigans? I don't think so. Well, all creatures are supposed to be a mix of the light and the void, which means in theory any creature can decide that it wants to pursue the path of the light. In their culture they did indeed have elements, but we already have a race that can... In fact, we have two races at least now that can be shaman and paladins, so that is not something that automatically discounts it.
So how is your progress going so far?
My what, sorry?
Your progress.
Well, we'll just be doing Agrimar for the first time tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
I
Do you have the
imagine.
comp for it?
Yeah, I imagine it's not going to go well. To be honest, heroic tends not to go very well. So we have a bit. There's a bit of a problem with. Maybe it's just because it's heroic. We have a bit of a problem with people doing the crowd control properly because they lose too much damage. Oh no, I've got to move out of range of the boss. So we'll have to see. And I can't use mine, like Repentance doesn't work on them. So I'm a bit, I can't really help out. The best I can do on Heroic is just chuck a single stun on them if they get, and then, leave it for someone else to deal with it properly.
You can use Hand of Endurance.
Hindrance. Yeah, Hand of Hindrance to slow them down, yeah.
I don't know, like, the talent, the stun talent. It stuns almost everything except elements. Like, why? Why did they exclude the elements out of everything?
Well, yeah, I remember thinking, because the last time we did Heroic this week, and I was, because we knew we would be doing it on Mythic this week, and I remember thinking, just checking what they were, because sometimes when they have that sort of shape, that fire elemental shape, sometimes they're not elementals, they're aberrations, because aberrations are usually like things of the void. And I was thinking, okay. And then I was going to have a look at it, then I just suddenly thought to myself, no, because Repentance doesn't work on either. It works on like humans, beasts, dragonkin, undead.
Undead, yeah, like
demon.
Almost everything except the element.
Yeah, does it work on? It does work on demons, doesn't it? Because I used it in Nighthold on cooldown. Yeah.
It works even on Arcway. Arcway when you do the skip.
Oh no, I never take it on Arcway.
You can just stun the dude with like you can just stun it and skip a lot of trash using a certain skip.
Well, I mean, that's a useful thing. Warlocks should be delighted that they've got something to banish this expansion. Yep. They're not likely to next expansion. Banish is the best crowd control because damage doesn't break it.
Yeah, and generally Warlock's been so dominant this time.
Yeah.
Like almost every boss they top it. They have huge sustain defensives. Although their mobility is a bit questionable, like you can use the thing that sacrifices your life.
For a raid, if you can plan ahead, I mean, you've got your personal portal and you've got your gateway, and if you're a void elf, you've also got your spatial rift now. Why is Killjane's burning wish listed as Ret Paladin's best trinket? Because it is.
It is if you don't.
It's not the best legendary to use, but if you had no limit, like Blizzard said, for example, that in the last few weeks they only said they might remove all the restrictions on legendaries so we can wear as many as we like. In that case, you will be using that legendary.
Yep. Like it is the strongest. Like if you don't have a DPS legendary, it's the strongest thing to use. Like assuming you have the wrist, for example, and you have the boots, then the trinket will most likely be the better choice. But first you have to send yourself, of course.
Yeah. But it is. It's better than any other trinket on a strict basis. It's just that it's not the best legendary. Yeah. So that's why you don't use it very much, if at all. Unless you've got some cunning idea to cheese some logs with it. Like on, what was it, Scorper on the first boss on Nighthold, you could sometimes, if you wanted to cheese a load of damage.
Yep. How was Nighthold with you, by the way?
Nighthold was fine. I had no problems with Nighthold at all. So
Divine Hammer was nice. Like it was
I mean, even on Gul'dan, like with the I mean, timings for Crusade would get thrown out all the time, depending on how quickly you did certain phases. But in the last phase, you could use, if you saved it, obviously it mean a bit less damage, but you could make sure you had Wake of Ashes up for every single set of parasites. And again, you could stun them. So that was quite useful
Ret was
as well.
nice for cooldown. Absolutely nice. You have that passive cleave with Divine Hammer on eyes.
Yeah.
And the last phase where every parasite set spawns, you can stun it. Ret was nice.
I think it's been nice, all expansion, apart from Tomb of Sargeras.
Yeah, and Emerald Nightmare as well. Like, it wasn't that great.
It may have been dependent on what you did.
No, because Emerald Nightmare, you had to have the good legendaries to perform as good as the other Reds who had it. Like if you had, let's say, the Freedom build, remember it? And Sivas, you wouldn't parse as good as.
Well, no, but that
had the Adrin and the Cake, so there was a huge bit of unfair.
But that was just to do with the legendaries rather than the class, wasn't it?
Yep. Well, at the start of the expansion, those two legendaries made the class be as powerful as it was. But then it smoothed out when they buffed the legendary drop rate. At first it was like such a huge outlier to have the two legendaries compared to others who didn't have them.
So Dago saying, do you expect Retribution passive to go away completely or through a lot of reworks instead? My personal opinion is that they do have this pride thing, and if they put something in and insisted it's class fantasy, they're unlikely to want it getting rid of, even if you stamp your feet. But it could be explained to them that the damage proportion of it is very harmful to us in terms of tuning, and they could easily just keep it as a damage reduction. The 30% damage reduction would be fine, or they could give us something else like a speed boost or something like that during it. Nothing that directly improves our damage. But there is a guaranteed way to make sure it happens. And it's simple. What happens is that you get someone on the North American Paladin forums to write a post saying how it's harmful and how it's harmful, and also how it would be vastly improved and still fit the class fantasy if you just remove the damage portion of it. Allow the damage reduction, maybe give it a movement speed boost when someone dies or something like that. That would be fine. And then what you do is you get 500 people to post their agreement with it. Okay? At that point, Blizzard have to pay attention. So here's what happens. So they pay attention but ignore it. So what you then do is all those 500 people all the next week do the same thing again, or maybe 2 weeks later, space it out, give them 2 weeks to think about it, do the same thing, but everyone gets someone else to do it. Everyone find a buddy. So now you've got 1,000 Ret Paladins saying this. And then if they don't pay attention to it, then you repeat the same process. 2 weeks later, you get 4,000 doing it. Blizzard are all about the exponential increase. They'll be delighted with this tactic. So before you know it, there'll be every Ret Paladin in the world saying this before it goes live, and it'll all be sorted.
Yep.
Simple. But people need to post. And not angry post, not anything aggressive, not anything that... Because that's just going to make them more defensive. You just put it like this. This is clearly harmful because to get good damage, you're having to... Because it's noticeable, you do way more damage at the start of a tier than later on, because later on people have stopped dying. And if you think about it this way, it's a 20% damage buff. 20% is like a week DPS cooldown. I mean, what is that roughly what, say, Pillar of Frost would give DKs, Frost DKs, something like that? I know it buffs their strength, but it's that sort of thing. It'd be like, you know, if you had a DPS cooldown that worked every minute, that'd be the sort of power of it. And it's something that can easily proc every minute. So just sort of say, if you want it for class fantasy, fine, get rid of the damage component. Replace it with either nothing or something that doesn't buff damage.
Like having your damage, as I said earlier, be linked to someone
Yeah.
shitting his bed is just like too unfair to the guilds that does no mistakes. Like you can't compare a Ret who is in a shitty guild that have high prices with a Ret with a good guild that nobody dies in it. It's just like too much unfair in it.
Yes. And also when they die as well, I mean, you can have 3 people. What was it? What happened? Like you could have a situation where, let's say 3 people die in a fight. And there's a difference between all 3 of them dying at the same time, which is not helping you, or each one of them dying, let's say 5 seconds into wings every time. That's a big difference.
Yep.
Also, Cigarette Ward, sorry, I'm not actually very good. I don't even know. I don't know about even advertising, where to advertise streams or anything like that. So that's the reason. You just have to hope word of mouth gets out. I advertise it on my YouTube channel and on Twitter. So if people follow me there, they find out. And also, obviously, in the Paladin Discord. The Ret passive is too toxic. Well, it is toxic. It is very, because like Blizzard said at first, at the start of Legion, they said it's just a bit of flavour. We're not going to tune the damage around it. We're not going to balance the damage around it. Well, that was obviously nonsense. So later on in Legion, they did concede that actually it was having a bit of an effect. But they haven't as yet said that they're going to deal with it. So, and remember what I said, they're not working on Paladins right now in the alpha, like only little bits, but not right now. That's a good thing, really. Because it means if people start posting that they don't want this thing, then it's in their minds for when they do get around to it. And hopefully it'll go.
I don't want them to put Wake of Ashes as a torrent.
No, I don't. I think it's integral enough to the gameplay that actually it should just be baseline. But
it's an ability really.
It's a lesser one for me. Because the thing is, they also did say that where something affects resource generation, which obviously that does, they would look at increasing the rate of resource generation. So they may just reduce cooldowns on our builders or something.
I mean, I hope so, but Wake of Ashes is so great. An ability.
I mean, if I was to focus on one thing, trying to get one message to Blizzard, it would be getting rid of the Retribution passive. There are several, there's probably a wish list of 5 things I'd have. But I think that would be number 1. Because I would probably say after that, making sure that our utility is class-wide. Making sure that, you know, I would like Wake of Ashes to be baseline. I would also like to have a magic damage reduction ability.
Yeah. I would love to have that.
And I would like utility abilities to be off the global cooldown. And that's for not just for Rets, that's just for everyone. You know, utility abilities off the global cooldown.
That would be so great. Having MDR and utility. And yeah.
Could you imagine the Retribution cooldown to get a cooldown so it can't proc again within 5 minutes or so? That might make it better, but you're still, even then, the difference between someone dying and no one dying, especially during wings, it's like loading up another DPS cooldown on top of your DPS cooldown. It still has a difference. I mean, anything that dilutes it is going to be better, but the best thing is just to remove it altogether.
Or, you know, you can pay your healers to die for you during farm.
Oh no, I don't care about ranking personally. I'm more interested when we kill the bosses that aren't guaranteed to die.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, it's not fun. Like there was a similar situation in WoD, but for a different reason. And that I remember on Iron Maidens, I used to go up on the boat for the first couple. There was one particular one where I remember there were 3 ads up there, and you had to kill them quite quickly. And sometimes we'd kill my group would kill them really quickly, and sometimes we wouldn't kill them in time. And every single time, if we killed them in time, I'd be top of damage, and if we didn't kill them in time, I'd be bottom of damage. And it was just to do with these random procs. It was to do with the set bonus, whether you'd get like your free Hammers of Wrath or something like that. I forget exactly what it was. But there was such inconsistent... It was so based on random procs, the damage, that it's just... You don't need that. Because when you've got that short burst window to make, you need to be consistent. If they want Ret proc to influence DPS, I don't understand why they want it to influence DPS. It can't. You're saying that to do more damage you need someone to die. And that's not to the benefit of your raid. Unless it's in the last 20 seconds. If it's in the last 20 seconds, I've got wings up. Then absolutely I want a healer to die at that point, because that's going to do more good for the raid.
Yep.
Because that's another thing. Blizzard was saying, you know, when they did concede eventually, that actually it is having an effect. But it's not... people aren't gaming it, they said. Of course they... Why wouldn't you? The last 20 seconds of a fight, wings up, and you've got healers all alive. They're not doing very... You know, this boss is going to die in 15 to 20 seconds. Of course you're going to get a healer to die. Of course you are.
And there's no way that Blizzard isn't tuning us around.
No, like, no. I mean, they conceded.
Because of having...
Yeah, they have to. Of course they do. Because if they did, like, look at it this way. Compare, say, Affliction Warlock. So, on Coven, we obviously know that Warlocks are going to do ridiculous amounts of damage on that. Reason being, they're a big dot class. Coven is an unusual fight, but it's a fight that's absolutely made for multi-dotters. Because it's, one, it's a council fight. And two, those bosses have to be spread out at least a little bit. So, you're obviously a multi-dotter is going to do overpowered damage on that. But you can't just nerf that damage, because then on a normal fight, a single target fight or one with just a few adds, they would do much less damage. But that's exactly what they have done with Rets. Because if they weren't tuning it around the Retribution passive, whenever you got a 30% uptime on it, your damage would be ridiculously out of whack. You wouldn't just be top damage, you'd be top damage by the same margin that Warlocks are top damage on Coven.
Yep.
But we're not. Give Wings 3 charges. If they give Wings 3 charges, it's nice. It was quite nice in Hellfire Citadel for the flexibility of it. But it means Avenging Wrath was not a very strong cooldown either. So it's one of those things. Do you want a weaker cooldown with the 3 charges? Or do you want a strong cooldown on just every 2 minutes? And again, it depends on the fight. It still depends on the fight length as to how powerful that becomes.
Yep.
But anyway, I'll do the usual thing here. We've gone on for like over 2 hours here. So I'll just give it like 5 more minutes for any last little comments to come out. And then we'll probably call it a day there. Provide real synergy with Retribution at least. Oh, are you suggesting that we pop those charges when someone dies? Is that what you're suggesting? Remember, it wouldn't necessarily be Crusade we'd have either. We may in BFA... Obviously, the aim would be not to have Crusade all the time. Otherwise, Blizzard have cocked it up again. They'll be wanting us to sometimes use Crusade. Sometimes it'll just be Avenging Wrath baseline. And taking Divine Protection or Wake of Ashes, wouldn't it? Yeah, so... That would be... Yeah. That would be just to basically... That'd be like Blizzard admitted that the Retribution passive is a serious problem, but that they're not going to do the obvious thing to stop it being a problem. To give us 3 charges specifically to stop the Retribution passive being a problem. is like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. No tier bonus. Will this make stat balance more prominent for Ret? I don't know that we can describe it as no tier bonus, because remember, we're still getting the effects of the Azerite armor. That's just replacing the idea of tier. There's still bonuses that come as a result of it. But do you mean stats on gear? Because for something like that, it all really depends on what's available in a particular tier. Well, if the nut is really hard, then even then you still risk obliterating the nut. It's very difficult with a sledgehammer to apply just enough pressure to crack it without going through and squashing the much softer nut inside. I think we've been quite lucky this tier. It's just it depends what drops, doesn't it? Because there's quite a lot of haste mastery pieces. So getting the haste and mastery you want shouldn't be that difficult. But there's also plenty of other... Like, there's 3 boots, aren't there? I mean, I've got some versatility mastery boots, I think. Because they tighten... I got them in heroic, but they tighten force to like 975. But there's also haste mastery boots. I think there might be crit haste boots as well. So there's 3 types of boots.
Haste. From Coven.
Yeah. Whereas, I'm pretty sure that in Nighthold, or at least one of the tiers, there was only 1 set of boots. So it all depends on how much choice there is in terms of whether we'd be able to get our ideal stat balance from gear. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, with tier, you've got to remember... Alright, it's not as bad as this expansion, you could argue. Sometimes you had 8 pieces of gear completely wiped out. Because potentially 6 tier pieces plus 2 legendaries. You know, that's almost half your gear choices. So it will inevitably be better in BFA for just using non-set bonus items, I guess.
And
but it will still depend on what the choice is.
For being a good paladin, and from like he pinned our stream in the Paladin Discord. So good job, buddy, for being a great paladin. And would you agree that Ret was Retribution Prime? I don't think Wood was the best expansion for Ret, apart from the last HFC. Like, I think right now we are in the prime of Retribution in Antaros. Like how that they made the entire tier line up perfectly with our abilities and our cooldowns. How they are right now effective with the tier itself. Like there's even relics that drops that buffs our Crusade timer. I think Antaros is one of the best trades for Reds right now ever made, apart from HFC. What do you think?
I'm trying to think back to HFC. I mean, there were some ones where, because of the 3 charges and wings, it was really, really useful. Like Velhari, for example, there were 3 points of the fight where you had to really burst the ad down, and again, just being able to save wings for that without having to delay when you'd normally use wings was really good. Obviously, being able to chain as soon as on the second boss, but that was just purely for farming purposes, that you were able to beat it before it took off into the air. Obviously, then you could just chain your Avenging Wrath, and you could do silly damage then. Maybe not arcane wage silly damage, but still. But again, you know, the tier was decent. Maybe there was one really weird one, I thought, the council fight, which I've forgotten what they're called, with Gortrek, Blood Boil and the other 2.
Yes.
Because I thought, in terms of overall damage on it, it was really bad. But in terms of usefulness, it was really good. Because, again, you could burst Blood Boil with... Because, I noticed the first time I did it, and I didn't progress on that fight with them because I was going on holiday. But when I came in, I ended up being bottom of damage. Admittedly, my gear was a bit behind that because I'd missed a week. But bottom of damage. But I was top of damage during the burst phase on Blood Boil, which was basically one of the really key DPS checks on the fight. So useful, but not necessarily going to look that great on the damage meters. But also on, again, I'm forgetting the names of all these bloody fights now, but I can picture it. The one with that guy in the construct, and then there were those ads that spawned from the portals, and some of them had to be burst down. Again, you would have wings for every single one of those because of it. So that sort of situation, you would just... So it's
right?
Yeah, that was it, Socrathar.
Yeah. It was a free boss as soon as you killed Gorfrind. Like, if you killed Gorfrind and you still had a red time left, you would just go and kill Socrathar on your way. That boss was just about interrupting and having hunters CC. And like, it was just a free boss.
I mean, Iskar was really good as well if you did it in the right way. I remember doing it with a particular guild I was in, and it was absolutely great. And then I joined another guild, which was a Horde guild, and they did it in a really weird way, where the ads were nowhere near the boss. Well, that wasn't very good. Thankfully, I was so baffled by this crazy strategy that I said so, and there were enough other people in the raid who also thought it was crazy that they actually changed it. So we changed it to the point where we did keep the ads. But if you kept the ads on Iskar, then you could do crazy damage on that boss too.
Yeah, Iskar was nice, but I don't like the fights where it needs me to pay attention to the raid frames. I'm a DPS, I should focus on the boss damage, not on the raid frames, and see who have the wins or not.
Yeah, sometimes has to happen. Yeah, but no, I don't pay as much attention to raid frames, you know, when I'm DPSing either. I got into trouble for it on LFR today. Well, I say in trouble. Someone moaned. It's not quite the same thing. In LFR on my Warlock, because as a battle res, like, there was someone dying, and like, if they said in chat, oh, res such and such, I'd look at it. If it was a tank, I probably would. And then someone was going on after one go, oh, you know, they were dead for ages, why didn't they get a res? And I was thinking, well, I'm not paying. Why are they dead? It's LFR. Why are they dead? I'm not paying attention to the raid frames as a DPS. And I've got an easier job doing it, actually, because some people stick their raid frames on the left of the screen or something. You're almost never looking there. At least I put mine more sort of bottom middle in a more healer-friendly position. But I still don't look at them much as a DPS. There's times when sometimes I'm calling stuff out as if we're still carrying on a fight, and there's like 3 people left alive, clear wipe, but I haven't actually paid attention.
I would rather them, like, as Wildhammer said, Ret being ranged melee, and how they removed almost all the ranged abilities. It would have been better if they put all the ranged abilities into a 4th spec.
Yes.
Yeah, instead of just like removing them from the game.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that's another thing. If they did do a Shocked in spec, you know, you could bring back Exorcism as an actual ranged builder. That would naturally work.
Denounce also. Bring it into
Denounce, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we think Mythic Plus will lose some popularity in BFA since it gets rarer? I think you've got to think about 2 populations of Mythic Plus players for that one, personally. For the people who can, let's say at the moment, plus 15 gets you the highest item level. If you push it higher, you've got a better chance of getting more pieces of loot, but, you know, you don't get any higher item level. So the people who can easily do the 15 and are actually going to push, some of those players might not be as encouraged, but remember there's other reasons for pushing it as well, just beyond damage. Some people like to get, for example, the Mythic Plus scores. But if you think about which must be the majority of players who are not able to complete a 15, there's no reason why Titanforge being rarer would put them off, because they can always get better item level guaranteed just by trying to push an extra level of key, isn't there?
I think it's the opposite. It will be more popular because there's no more tire, so you can just sit all day in Mythic Plus to get the pieces that doesn't drop from raid, which are like 3 or 4 pieces that you can't get them because the neck and the 3 slots from the raid. Yeah, apart from that, you can get everything else from Mythic Plus.
Well, for the people, for the people who don't do the big raids as well, they can get everything, presumably including the Azerite armor.
Yeah, like it will even be more popular than before.
You always look at raid frames. If you should save someone with lay on hands, you don't. Oh, I don't need to look at it for the Ret buff. I create myself a notification when someone dies. There's a big old icon with the Retribution passive proc, so I know when someone's died. I don't care who or how, I see it. It's by my...
I do have a weak aura where if someone dies after the Retribution buff runs out, it whispers him, "Thank you for your sacrifice."
Oh no, I don't have. I'm not that silly. I'll say it over Discord though. If they do it at a good time, I will say thank you very much. But it almost never happens. But in terms of saving with someone with lay on hands, how can you tell you've ever saved anyone ever with lay on hands?
I just keep it for myself. Lay on hands.
I'm not saying I've never used it on someone else. If I'm worried, but that's all you can ever use it for. You are concerned. Unless every healer is dead, the only time you can definitely say you've saved someone, which does occasionally happen, the only time you could definitely say you've saved someone is it's on the fight, the boss is almost dead, all the healers are dead, the tank's looking a bit low. You don't seriously think they're going to keep themselves alive. You can use lay on hands on them at that point. That's fine. But in any other situation, for all you know, a big heal is on its way, and all you've actually done is either that lay on hands has become over heal because the heal got in just before you did, or your lay on hands got in just before the heal did and you made their heal over heal. Yep. So it's almost impossible to be sure you've actually saved someone. But again, if you're worried, obviously there's certain people in a raid, and especially, you know, you think to yourself, if they die, we're a bit buggered. It's worth using it. You know, you just do it, but you can't really say you've saved them. You've just done it as a the health is low, and it's like, well, let's just do it just to be on the safe side.
Yep.
But yeah, that is another point, isn't it? The problem is if you do say, if it's not a tank, if it's just someone, a DPS, there is always that issue. You've potentially cost yourself 20% extra damage. You know, that's class fantasy. That's how Blizzard want us to behave, apparently. That's what we do. But anyway, I think that's a good time to close that one off there. I'll finish off with this last comment from Cigarette again. Wouldn't use it at all if all were alive and only one is dropping, but for example on the bridge for Iminar. Not on a Paladin, I hope, because that's exactly where our guild leader used it on me, and I died because of it. So I hope you don't mean on another Paladin. Never use it on another Paladin. Never, ever, ever. You're just getting them killed. I'd even think twice before putting it on a tank, actually, in that situation. Because the healers will be focused on the tanks in that situation as well. If they're not, then they, you know, your raid doesn't deserve to kill the boss. But okay. But anyway, I'll call it an end there. Thanks very much for Fardion for coming on. And thanks very much. Thanks very much for everyone else coming as well. I'm not sure when the next one of these will be. It always sort of depends on what's coming up. Usually there's round about once a month. I'm hoping that the next time we do one of these, where of course I'll give notice on YouTube and Twitter, that, well, Alpha had better be live. I'm sure it will be. I'm hoping that I will be in it and I'll actually be able to report back on some of the things there. I am hoping that I'll be able to, just like in Legion Alpha, be able to just incorporate some of that into weekly videos as well. But yeah, at least hopefully it'll be more of a focus on Battle for Azeroth, I would guess, for the next one. But yes, thanks for coming anyway, and I'll see you all later.